introduce my legendary stage mate, screen mate, Jay Sethi. Jay is Chief Marketing Officer of Diageo Beer and Senior Vice President in North America for Diageo's convenience category, and brings incredible insight on the topic of the day, marketing to the LGBTQ plus community. Welcome, Jay.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Dylan. Really appreciate it. Shout out to everybody out there. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. That's an incredible background you have there, too.
We try to keep it fun. I mean, Laverne's awesome, so it's easy to do.
That's awesome. Quick icebreaker. The people want to know. I have a two-part icebreaker here. What's your favorite Diageo beverage? I'm sure it's hard, like picking a favorite child. But also, are you familiar with the ritual of the Smirnoff Ice, getting iced?
Yes, of course. So my favorite Diageo product, a tie between, we just launched a spicy tamarindo vodka. I am half Mexican, so for me, this is like a bit of a taste from home. It is absolutely incredible. I put it over just soda water, and it's my favorite new drink. But also because, I grew up in a Mexican culture, tequila, Casamigos or Don Julio is just, my go-to, if you will. Love them both. And then probably I have to say shout out to my Guinness folks. I have learned to love a Guinness pint, and I hope St. Patrick's Day is coming up. I hope a lot of you get the chance to do that as well. Have I heard of Smirnoff Ice? Of course. I would say from two sides. I mean, one, we love that, this is a brand that we've had for, a couple decades now. And we love that it just continues to be a part of culture. But I will say that, we do want people to be responsible. So, don't overdo it, and, just keep it fun.
That's awesome. I've just added Tamarindo to my shopping list. So I guess a good place to start, you have an incredibly inspiring story. I was lucky enough to get a quick preview, but could you give us a bit of your background, sort of your personal journey to where you are now?
Yeah, of course, Dylan. In some ways, I consider myself incredibly lucky. I grew up in a great family in the middle of America, just outside Chicago. I'm very multicultural, universe. I guess what we all describe that to be today is how I grew up. My mom was from Mexico City, as I said, Catholic. My dad was from India, from Delhi, and coming from a Hindu background. And, then it was America. So it was really like three cultures, three languages, three types of food. And on the one hand, that made for some difficult things. And on the other hand, man, it exposed me to this, just the richness, I think, of diversity. And I'm so grateful that my parents never made us choose. We grew up doing everything, all the languages, too much of the food. And then, growing up in the Midwest was its own thing. And, it gave me a ton of just, I think, appreciation for people that are different than ourselves. It also made things hard in some ways, because obviously these are some more conservative cultures in some ways, and obviously the Midwest can be that too. And then I went on to work in corporate life at Procter & Gamble. P&G is dear to me. It will always be that. It gave me an incredible leadership foundation. My best friends came from there. I'm, godfather to their children now, and I'm just so grateful for the experience. But when you add up my upbringing and you add up Procter and Gamble, let's just say, I was also, struggling with how do I be myself? How do I allow myself to be, the passionate Latino leader that I want to be, while also succeeding in corporate America? I had a fair amount of success, but it was tough. And it was really at the 10-year mark, almost on the dot at P&G, that I left. I quit. And it was really, I knew that from a business perspective, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to work on smaller brands and live in bigger cities. I had been living in Arkansas, then Ohio, and then Baltimore, and many, many wonderful people I met along the way. But I wanted to live in New York. I wanted to live in big cities. And I also, frankly, needed to come out. And it was kind of a disaster, honestly. It was really, really hard because of the background, because I had created, frankly, a hole that seemed just almost impossible to climb out of. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, you're already brown. You can't be gay too. Like, it's too much. Don't ask this much of corporate life. And then, through a lot of soul searching and through a wonderful trip to India, I finally did it. And super dramatic because it's me on New Year's Eve from the beaches of Goa. And I texted it to Talkspace. I couldn't say it then, but I got the process started. And I think I learned, one, I was so wrong. I didn't lose my friends. I think they like me more because I could just be more myself and have fun. Family was tough in some ways, but in most ways they're incredible. And I think I just had created a universe that was going to be harder because of my upbringing, but in reality, people are progressing and America's there, and I'm blessed to have an incredible world around me. And I was wrong about work. I didn't lose my job. Arguably it's gotten better. I think I've gotten better. I often say it gets better because we get better. I approach work in a different way. I don't come to work with so much baggage. And I think, and more importantly, I'm trying to make room for other people now, unapologetically, and be loud about it. And when I add that all up, I look back, I'm really grateful. I'm mad that I took this long, to be honest with you. I got some catching up to do in some ways, but I'm feeling great and fortunate to be in this position and hopefully to make some change happen.
That's incredible background. I'm seeing the movie rights now. I could see, starring Jay Sethi, a documentary about your life. It's just so incredibly inspiring. And to that end, I read an anecdote, or maybe heard you on a panel say that once that happened, you had people sort of reaching out to you, being like, "Hey, I'm you, a year ago or 90 days ago. Can you help me, make some similar changes in my life?" Is there some validity to that?
Yeah, it's been one of the biggest blessings. It's almost astonishing, like how there were the people on my teams and others that just I think through the sheer force of being yourself and creating that space could do that themselves. And then there were other folks. Diageo is a huge global company, and so someone from Russia, someone from the Middle East, who are it's a different kind of struggle entirely. And very quietly, as a friend first and foremost, we walk through some of this stuff together. And I'm no expert, but I do think some of this is just empathy, and some of this is just being vulnerable and saying it's not easy. It was kind of a disaster for me too. I clearly have learned from so many people. Foremost, Laverne. One of the things I remember being on set with her on the first time we were working together, and just watching her and being like, wow, if she can be her, then I can be me. And we were on stage once and I asked her, what would you say to your younger self? And she said something to the effect of I would tell you that this is incredibly hard, but it's going to be okay. Fight for it. You're going to be happy. You're going to succeed. And, those are my own words in my own heart. And so I think, I'm here for anyone that needs that support. I think both formally and informally. And it is a real blessing that people are reaching out.
It's amazing. And you use a couple of words there describing the characteristics of empathy, vulnerability, now shifting over to extending those into some of the brand ethos of the portfolio that you oversee. These causes have been near and dear to Diageo overall for a long time, Smirnoff in particular. Can you tell us about that history? You have some interesting anecdotes around, how Smirnoff has been a leader in sort of that voice for a long time.
Yeah, well, first, I'm going to say something about Diageo because and then I'm going to talk about the brand leadership. On Diageo, I will just say we are obviously in a moment it's an inflection for this country right now. And we all have to choose to just do the right thing and step up. We have great power. We need to use it responsibly. And I can't do my job on Smirnoff or in Guinness and other brands if Diageo isn't doing it. And Diageo, it's a decade of perfect scores on the corporate equality index. I'm incredibly proud that last year our family leave policy changed to become paid 6 months, regardless. It's a family leave policy, regardless of gender or how you have the baby. For the LGBTQ community, that's life changing. That opens up possibilities that you could never have envisioned before, and that makes working for Diageo incredible. And then it extends to obviously workforce representation in front of and behind the camera. and huge commitments on things like policy. We work with the HRC on I heard you on just ending the last conversation on the Equality Act, and pushing this forward. And so I'm super proud to be part of Diageo. Smirnoff specifically, this is a brand that our first LGBT ad goes back to 1968, I believe. So, if they had the courage to do that then we can have the courage to do big things now. And that includes, all year representation. Laverne is not just our ambassador during Pride. She is our ambassador all the time. And you know what? She's great at it because she's a phenomenal actress. And she's at the intersection of the conversations of race, gender, identity, and is been a partner not just in the making of advertising, but in how to do things well. I remember last year during the throes of the social justice issues we were all facing, we just were talking, what should we do? And she was very clear. She's like, I'm glad, let's keep pushing at the national level, but I also need you to help the folks that need it most. And so through that came a partnership with the Transgender Law Center, just as one example. But, I think more than anything, it's about choosing to be on the side of this community all year. I think we know, all of us, that this is a community that has enormous economic and cultural power. I think we all know it's the right thing to do. And then I think it's just doing it now. All year representation, giving where you can, being on the side of policy, so we actually advance the interests of everyone. And then I think doing it well, not just always in a rainbow ad, but, with Laverne, we just always ask her, well, what's your, like, she always says, like, I just love that I'm just living out my fantasy. So she'll say, like, I want to, in this ad, it was for Red, White, and Berry, shout out, we love this product, hope you try it. She had this vision of like an old diner and being able to like sort of, mix that up. And so, okay, we made Laverne's Diner, and she actually took the sign home with her. And I think that's a sort of partnership I think that we want to have on this brand, and matching it with real commitments. That's Smirnoff. And then there's other brands, Guinness, a different kind of brand entirely. What I'm proud of on Guinness is sometimes the choices we choose not to make. And so, St. Patrick's Day is enormous for us, but last year we didn't participate in the New York St. Patrick's Day parade because they were excluding LGBTQ floats. And, at some point your principle just has to matter. And so I think those sorts of choices really, really do make a difference.
That brings up an interesting theme that I think has been recurring throughout these sessions today, which is, aligning what you're saying and what you're doing. And it sounds like, you're putting your money where your mouth is. That St. Patrick's Day excerpt is the perfect example of that. And you brought up, the HRC score. Congratulations, 2021, another, perfect score for Diageo. That's, for anyone that doesn't know, a benchmarking report on corporate policy around workplace equality. And so there's this notion of, driving these things forward in front of the camera, but then there's also the notion of behind the camera. What's the secret to delivering these perfect scores? I mean, and how do you make sure that extends from, upper leadership down all the way through to folks who are activating campaigns or production assistants that are on set? There's clearly a culture here. Is there a secret to that?
I mean, I think the secret is first in having a very clear purpose as a company that has not just a statement attached to it, but the actions attached to it, like diversity goals and KPIs. Treat it like a business. We are good at that. We're good when we measure things, and it creates accountability. And I think the other part of it is hire. By hiring diverse folks, including myself, we are going to make it happen. I hate the conversation when folks say they can't find folks. It's nonsense. There's so many incredibly talented people from different communities. It's a choice. You have to choose to find them, and then you have to choose to empower them. I'm really proud that even on Smirnoff, we have a 50% hiring policy or goal on diversity across, in front of and behind the camera, which, to your point, then means that it's empowerment, not just of our own teams, but it's also our agencies, the production, the directors. That has a cascading impact, the domino effect that I think is most powerful. It creates the most amount of sustainable change. So many folks in the communities will tell you, don't just make a good statement. Don't even just donate money. Hire us, empower us. We're good at what we do. And I think more than anything, that's what I believe in.
modern marketers rely heavily on technology. We're talking about very human things today. Does technology play a part?
Sure. I think technology is in some ways, technology and data, I think, are democratizing forces. What I love about them is if you look at what's happening right now, data, because, for example, in the workplace, it used to be, I think, the reality that, frankly, if you were the most senior person in the room, it was your vote that, mattered, and everybody, whatever. But now, I'm like, if you've got a data point, if you have knowledge and fact on your side, you win the day. And I think that is empowering and equalizing. And I think technology, if I think about digital media, TikTok, just take TikTok. They're not waiting around for brands anymore. They're not waiting around for these bigger forces to say you matter. People are just making themselves matter. I think that's incredible. And there's a lot of challenges that come with it. We've all seen that in the last year, but I think the net of it is really, really good. And I'm millennial too, so I love technology. I'm leaning in, and I think I'm leaning in because it's better marketing, and it's also equalizing. I really believe that.
So before we move on from sort of Diageo workplace and culture, I know that there was a personal story and a guest that you wanted to include. Is that still something we want to throw down here? Is Natalie available?
Hell yeah. Natalie, if you're out there, so Natalie, I'll introduce her while she comes on board here. Natalie is a dear friend, but Natalie is also, an innovation leader for us on Smirnoff and some of our other brands. And I know you were curious about how do we think about innovation in this context. So I thought just hear directly from Natalie.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you having me here. So, I mean, we talked a lot about authenticity in the upfront, right? And when I think about my process, so I'm part of the community very proudly. But when I think about my process, I think about, I didn't really know how to talk to other women. I'm a proud lesbian, but I didn't know how to talk to other women. I didn't really know how to talk to anyone in the community. And what really bonded me to that was over drinks and having a trusted brand and having something that I knew, like I could talk to something, with another person. And that is something that I think needs to be at our core is you need to be a brand that is trusted. So innovation can be born out of any concept, but if you're not trusted and you're not authentic, then innovation just could fall flat. So these big brands, they're amazing. And I love working for one. And Jay, it's been such a journey, and I'm so proud of where we've come with this. But we need to become listeners. And once you listen authentically, you actually become a responder. And once you're an authentic responder, that's where you see the success. I think that's what differentiates us. So I would say the big takeaway from me is I've started to become that, and I've started to build that into our innovation strategy. And I'm very happy with where we're going. I think there's big things ahead.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Natalie. Feel free to hang out. Would love you to weigh in on some of these questions. And I think it's an incredible example of, Jay has the stage here and he uses it as an opportunity to elevate a voice around him with an interesting perspective. And so, again, rubber to the road. Natalie, you mentioned
Natalie, by the way, is a boss, and I'm half nervous, half terrified of her. But in the best,
right back at you.
in the best possible way, because you know what, it's like it is in the richness of the conversations. It's in the debate. It's right. And I think that's what makes this a wonderful relationship, and what makes her a great leader.
Awesome. So Natalie, you mentioned authenticity a few times. There's an interesting stat. The Gay Times reported that while 64% of adults think it's positive for the LGBTQ plus community to be visible in ads, a considerable 72% of that community thinks the way that they are presented in advertising can be tokenistic. How does Diageo maintain authenticity? How do you avoid tokenism or signaling that are so easily sniffed out these days? Are there methods in which you're communicating with the community directly, getting feedback of ideas ahead of production? How do you achieve authenticity and avoid, saying the wrong thing?
Right. I mean, I think we need to be very clear that there is a level of vulnerability that comes with the brand, right? If you're putting yourself out there, the authenticity and the vulnerability go hand in hand. So you do need to throw yourself out there and put things out there, and it does become a risk. But what we do is we really try to ground that and root that in things that, you know, we talk about research testing and everything, but once you put people on board on the brand team and on the innovation team that actually part of the community and actually listen to the community, that becomes very, very true. So I believe actually having a diverse team is really what is going to propel you into being successful, right? Like that is the differentiation at the end of the day.
I mean, I think it's, don't do it. Like, just don't do tokenism. Like,
yeah, just
you know what I mean?
Like, don't rainbow wash if you know what I mean?
Hire a diverse team, as Natalie said. Hire diverse agencies. Ask people like your partners, like Laverne. Like, she'll just say no, to be honest with you. And do it all year. You know, I mean, I'm most proud of the work. I love some of the work we've done for Pride. I think it's well rooted. Last year during World Pride, our campaign was called Welcome Home. It was actually for all the folks arriving from different countries, for which New York is like a safe space, a very different universe. And so we, you know, using with Laverne, we put all this up around the airports and stuff so that we could welcome them on their way in. But I'm most part of the work that we've done with Laverne that's not around Pride. And I think that's the bigger play here. Just don't do it, y'all. Stop.
Yeah, you know, Jay, you said something that really resonated with me was, and I'm sure most of the folks listening, is that it's about a year round, right? So I think the tokenism comes when you're activating, you know, maybe only during Pride. And as Jay said, some of our most proud moments are actually outside of Pride and becoming a year round, really trusted, diverse brand that is authentically listening and responding.
So we're talking about Pride. The world has gone virtual. What is the plan? Is there going to be a virtual Pride? Can you share anything around, you know, how Diageo is thinking about Pride this year, even though it doesn't look like we'll be gathering in parades in the streets of New York?
I mean, one of the things we've learned over the last year is don't bet, because we've been way more wrong than we've been right. So what we do now is we plan to go. You know, we know that there's you know, almost no chance that there's going to be the extensive parades and celebrations of the past, and that's just the responsible thing to do. But we also know that this is a community that has disproportionately been affected by COVID and the pandemic and social justice issues. If you put those at the nexus, the LGBT community sits at the center of it, which means that we have a responsibility to help. So I think first and foremost, it's like this year's Pride needs to be about doing something that helps the community, because it's been a tough year. And then I think second, this is a community that still likes to celebrate in small ways, in whatever ways it's responsible. Let's not kid ourselves. We're fun, and that's awesome. And so, how do we make it easy and in a good way help folks to celebrate, whether it's at home, you know, in their bubbles, or, you know, in some parts of the country, it's a little bit more safe to do so. But I think, you know, first and foremost, act and help, and then second, I think, help people to celebrate in some way. You know, if there's anything I'd say, the third thing, I mentioned this at the beginning, is we also want to remind and be careful. Like, people, it's been a tough year. We don't want people to overconsume either. So please be responsible out there. You know, we dedicate 30% of all our television media to responsible messaging, which is an important commitment that Diageo has made. And I think it's even more important now.
30% of total budget, that's likely not insignificant. So yeah, you brought up an interesting point, which is, you know, impact of COVID, not only on small businesses, but on, you know, everyone, and the disproportionate impact that that's had on this community. I know that Diageo is doing some incredible things to support, you know, bars and restaurants. Can you share more about that program?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Diageo, as I said, has stepped up, you know, in the long term, and right now we're doing commitments on top that are just, you know, in light of the reality that we're all facing together, and the fact that we are a business that can help. So I think, you know, first and foremost, we established a $20 million community fund that is empowering and helping businesses to recover, specifically minority-owned multicultural businesses, especially in the Black community. We just announced, I'm super proud that we just announced a $10 million commitment to HBCUs. And this is the fund financial aid grants. I think this is something that is generational in its impact potentially, and that's really, really awesome to see. And I would just say, it keeps going. I mean, that's the great thing. There's the Diageo corporate layer, and then there's the brands, as I mentioned, some of the things that we're doing. And when you add it all up, I really hope we're on the right side of this. And I'm really grateful that I could be on.
Wow, rubber hitting the road. Another great example of it. So let's talk about sort of the business of marketing to the community. It's obviously the right thing to do. What is the payoff if you get it right in terms of sales potential, growth potential, acceleration of the actual business itself? Again, beyond being the right thing to do, what is the opportunity if you get it right?
I mean, I think it's pretty significant on an economic basis. I think we all know, everyone, I'm sure, through the various different panels you've heard this. I won't regurgitate too much, but this is a community that's growing. This is a community that economically spends more overall. And when you add those two things together, there's obviously a financial benefit to serving the community in the right way. I would also say that that's business, and there's culture. This is a community that has immense cultural impact. Like, you can't look around America and not see right now how many incredible LGBTQ influencers, celebrities, ambassadors overall are changing America. And I think you see in there the multiple effect. Mainstream consumers are also, they're telling us that they're more willing to support brands and businesses that support this community. So you're doing it because the community itself has economic power. You're doing it because they have cultural power. You're doing it because the mainstream audience also wants you to do it. But again, going back to the first thing, you're just doing it because it's the right thing to do. So when you add that all together, the business case, I think, is clear. It's more than clear. I think the thing is that doing it well. I don't know, Natalie, would you add anything else?
No, I mean, it's spot on. When talking about being successful, right? I mean, and growth potential. I hate to continue to go back to it, but like the options are endless when you actually are trusted and authentic. I hate to do it, but that's at the core. So yeah, I mean that again, like, I think you just need to be a very trusted brand, and the options are endless. The future's endless, really.
Totally. So talking about sort of the business side, another obvious impact of a global pandemic, a lot less happening on premise. Bars and restaurants are closed. That's where a lot of people drink a lot of the Diageo products and enjoy the Diageo products. Has that affected your sort of communication strategy? Obviously you're diversifying the portfolio of drinks. We're seeing more, diverse options like Tamarindo, like you mentioned, or even things like sugar-free or using natural botanicals, et cetera. How is the beverage category changing in light of no one's going to bars and more people going from home?
I mean, a couple different ways. I mean, first of all, there's no question it's fundamentally different than it was a year ago. Our on-premise businesses have been challenged in a way that is really, really tough to see. There's no question about that, right? And by the way, that's especially true for LGBTQ bars. So just another reason why we have to bring back that support. But on the other hand, we are seeing that people are enjoying beverages more in their home. And so, one of the differences, obviously from a marketing plan standpoint, we are focused more now on, the at-home environment and helping people understand how they can both, enjoy a beverage, whether they're on their own or with their family, or when it's safe, with their friends. And I think, that has shifted, obviously, our messages. It's shifted our media in a pretty significant way. Actually, the product behind me, Red, White, and Berry, we had shot the campaign, I don't know, like 2 weeks before I think COVID hit. And it was literally shot to be outdoor environment with all your friends in a party. And then none of it was like, you couldn't use it. It wasn't responsible. And so what I love is seeing the flexibility and agility of teams right now. We shifted the entire campaign in 2 weeks to be like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, drink at home. And it worked. And I think that's one of the best things that have come from the last year is the creative agility of all of our teams. We are better creatively than we all thought possible. And that extends to media and just about every way that we think about going to market. The other way it's changed, and this is the other part of my job now, is that we're seeing more and more consumers wanting their beverages in convenient formats. So think about the can or sometimes the bottle, but it's in small size formats. And this isn't going to change. We're seeing that that was already growing because people wanted just convenient formats. Suddenly there's a safety factor to it as well. Like you're holding your own can, you can enjoy it right there. You can't go to the bar and have incredible mixologists do it for you. Sometimes you can try it at home, but you want it, pre-made and all that. And then to your point, you can offer ranges. We have a zero sugar line that that gives you the chance to enjoy something, but without the sugar, that you might not want. And so I think we're seeing a massive impact from the business that we do, obviously in the bars that have been challenged more at home, but also in the types of formats. And that is innovation. That leads to then how do we then think about that differently and bring different types of benefits. So I don't know, Nat, if you want to talk about one of our pink lemonade or something hot.
Yeah, I know. That's I was excited to jump in on this conversation. This is my bread and butter, talking about formats and really, again, listening to what people want, right? We have a very exciting new launch in pink lemonade. We're extending it. We have ice and seltzer, and we have a broad range of things. So as Jay mentioned, offering that up is huge, because people now are realizing that they want all different types of drinks, and they want it in, again, convenient formats. So offering cans, offering bottles, offering disruptive formats, which is something that is on our radar. And I actually think that's a huge growth potential for us. And that's something that it can also catapult a brand, but something that we are listening to is consumers do want ease. They do want flavor. They do want fun, which is everything that we stand for at Diageo. But that,
and they want it now. Sorry, and they want it in e-commerce, right? And they want it with
they exactly. And I think when you combine e-commerce and you combine the different channels that we have, there is a new wave coming in disruptive formats, and a little teaser that we are looking into that. And I think it's a great thing for us. So, the more the merrier for us in terms
you heard it here first.
Innovation.
Disruptive formats coming. I'm picturing like the helmet with the 2 beer cans on either side and the tube, hands-free.
Just only for you though. It's a personal launch for you.
You'll need an extra large. I've got quite a melon.
So let's say we got a question from Andrew. Is that right? Now that we've all become more experienced with mixologists at home, how do you think that will impact the on-premise experience? I mean, in a really positive way. First of all, I think everyone, myself included, Natalie included, we are excited and ready to be able to go back when it's safe into a bar and to enjoy a drink with our friends. And so we think this absence of that, one, has taught us to be better at home, and that's a good thing. We've all figured out we can do some more things for ourselves. But on the other hand, I think it's also raised the profile of mixologists and bartenders, and damn, they're experts. There was an ad just last week that Ryan Reynolds, Diddy, and Beckham did together. And these are 3 of our ambassadors, and it was an ad basically them pretending to create a drink, and in the end, them saying, "Oh my God, it's terrible because we need mixologists." And I really hope that coming out of this, one, we'll all be able to go back into bars and enjoy it, but also that we'll have more of an appreciation for the art and for the real talent that exists out there, and that please say it to them. Say thank you.
Totally. I cannot wait to be screaming in a loud bar, open up a tab, forget to close it, the whole deal.
Oh
You missed the ritual.
Okay. Literally, I'm like, I can't wait to spend. It's so exciting.
Exactly. Okay, we've got 3 minutes left. I guess last question for me, for a marketer in the audience that is like, I'm sold, I want to affect change in this direction in my organization. Do you have some, a closing thought for them? How do you get started as a marketer, shifting the culture within your own organization, or shifting, again, in front of and behind the camera for themselves and their own companies?
Sure. Nat, why don't you take it for a minute and I'll close.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, I've been given the gift of moving from, you know, the supply side of the business, and I never thought that marketing or innovation was an option for me. I'll be very honest and vulnerable in saying that. Like I never thought that I would be able to be in this role. So I would say go after what you want, right? Uh, once you, I think there's a moment where you fall in love with what you're doing, and I found that with marketing and innovation. And again, like you really have to just believe in yourself and believe in the process and believe in the brand and believe in the business. And I did do that. And again, I think just my own personal journey from coming from a supply side of things, working on a production line pretty much all the way to where I am now, it just goes to show when you believe in people and you also believe in yourself, it does big things.
So as Nat said, number one, believe in yourself and fight for what you want wholeheartedly, unapologetically. I think what I would say to leaders out there is when you're in that position, you know, lead with the head, but lead with the heart. There's always a business case, but there's also a moment right now that we have to be on the right side of, I think, what will become history. And I think what we owe to our common, you know, community and to our common citizens. And you know the right thing to do. Let's all just join forces and to do it. So thank you for the opportunity to talk today, guys.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
very much.
Jay. Yeah, thank you so much, Natalie. Thanks for the time, and thanks for doing what you do to advance such an incredibly important imperative. Diageo is leading the way, and very excited to see where we go from here. Andrew, back to you.
Thank you, Dylan. And as you said, we started with a very high bar with our first session with MasterCard. And I want to thank you, Jay, and our special guest, Natalie, for keeping the bar extremely high for everything from, intersectionality with LGBTQ to, of course, as Jay and Natalie just shared, their own coming out journeys. Because yes, the importance of bringing your whole self to work is only going to make the work better and your careers better, as we've learned. So Jay and Natalie, thank you both so much for sharing your time and insights with us today.
Thanks, y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.